Wow, this has been an emotional podcast with Ruben and to losing his son to gang violence, to a neighborhood that he was a part of, and then just coping with rage and what to do. This is definitely one to watch and learn and heal.
Mm.
And welcome to fatherhood. And that's breaking the toxic cycle. Okay, so let me ask you a question. So they just shot up somebody in the neighborhood. You come outside, and now you're going to walk these people back who were from another neighborhood.
That's right.
And your best friend, Andrew, tells you, like, no, no, I'm not going to go. Like, no, I'm going to go. And so he's your best friend. So he's like, no, I can't let you go by yourself. So, and then now you go and you guys get shot and he's killed. Do you feel any guilt in that moment because he didn't want to go and now you put him in that situation? How do you process that at that moment, and how did you process it going forward?
Um, well, definitely there was a sense of guilt because I'm the one that led him into this lifestyle. Uh, he spent the night at my house that night. It's it's just a sense of being your brother's keeper, and I wasn't my brother's keeper. I put him in danger because of my stubbornness, because of my ego. And as the night goes on and we get shot, everything happens. It uh it left me empty. It left me feeling the regret of even thinking of going outside. So, with the death of my best friend Andrew, and now my son gonna be born on December 6th, on the day of my 15th birthday, uh, I named my son Andrew after my best friend that just passed away a few months earlier. He was supposed to be his Nino. He was, he was gonna raise him, be his godfather, and we had it all planned out. So unfortunately, when he passed away, I gave my son his name. And fast forward to 12, 21, 2020. My son Andrew, whom I named after my best friend, was murdered. And he found himself in a situation that he couldn't get himself out of. And I did share some of the story about that night, him calling
Let's
me,
go back to that phone call
that
because
phone
that's,
call.
yeah.
Okay.
So you were in Fontana
Yes.
and your son called you 911, 911, and you thought
Yes.
like he was just in a state of mind, maybe high or something. Like,
Exactly.
why don't be doing this.
Yeah.
And tell me about that conversation.
Yeah. Well, that night it was just a calm night. It's 7 o'clock at night, and I get a phone call out of the blue from my son, and 911, 911. That's all I heard on the phone, and I tell him, "Hey, mijo, what are you doing? What's going on? Pop, I need your help. Hey, mijo, do me a favor. Why are you calling me like this? I told you not to call me in this state of mind." He sounded like he was high, and he gathers himself, and he says that he's stuck in the wrong neighborhood, and that the truck is not moving. It stranded him. And so he starts describing what's going on around him. Uh, he's in a neighborhood that don't get along with his. So there's guys watching him, and he sees them, and so he's describing to me what they're doing, and he gets to the point where he's like, "Yeah, well, they're starting to walk over the bridge now." And at that point, I said, "You know what? At that point, I'm thinking I'm going to get off this phone right now and I'm going to go shoot down and go get my son before it gets any worse." So he hangs up with me saying that he's going to call somebody else and try to get himself out of that situation. So I hang up with my son and jump in my car. I'm in Fontana and I'm probably doing about 80 or 90 on the freeway. I'm going as fast as I can. And I get a phone call from one of my homeboys, and
Like 5 minutes later.
5 minutes later, and tells me that that they got him. And I said, they got who? And I said, they got Andrew. And I said, I just talked to him. Let me hang up with you real quick. I'm gonna call him back. So I hung up and I called my son's phone, and it just kept on ringing. And it was at that time that I realized that my son was dead. I realized that they took his life at that point. So I just went from 80, 90 degree and 80 and 90 miles an hour on the freeway down to 40, 50. And I knew exactly where he was at because he disclosed that to me in the conversation. So I get to the scene of the crime, and by that time there's news. News had just showed up. Police are there, and I could see my son down the ramp of a freeway off ramp, uh, just full of blood, white shirt full of blood. And I knew that was my son, but I showed no emotion. That's the one thing I can remember about that night, that I had no emotion. This is that thing that I talked about earlier of knowing how to disconnect from my emotions. I think that kicked in at that moment. And so all I can do was think about the people that killed my son, took his life, are in the shadows right now, are in the dark, looking and watching all this happen and unfold. And I kept on looking around, looking at the windows, looking at the bushes. And there was so much that took place that night, but in a nutshell right there, I was devastated to see that I lost my son, my friend, my homeboy, I guess. And I'm not proud of that. I must say that I'm not proud that he was my homeboy, but he was. He got into the same gang that I did, unfortunately, because, he got nothing out of it. But anyways, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
Coming back to the story though, is that, after that happened that night, uh, that's when I realized that
No,
even though
it's
emotion is
no, it's
starting to
it's
hit me
no,
now,
it's okay.
there's sometimes I could talk about this story and I can be okay. And there's sometimes that it just really takes me away because the emotions come back. But as a father, I felt like I let my son down. I led him the wrong way. I didn't give him the right advice. Didn't give him the right exampleship. Um, and so I live with a different type of guilt than it was with my best friend. Now I live with the guilt of losing my son behind a lifestyle or a world that maybe I led him into out of exampleship or something. I'm not sure, but to this day, I deal with that. I deal with that guilt, and I'm working on it because, uh, if I don't, it's going to consume me, and it's going to not allow me to be a father to my boys. And that's kind of where I'm at with that.
And did anybody ever get arrested for the shooting? No. It's normal just in the streets. It just was just
Yeah, they never found the shooters. I'm under the impression, because it was all gang related, that they probably weren't really even looking for him. You know what I mean? If he pops up, then hey, but if they are looking for him, and if there is some diligence in the process of investigation, then thank you, for pushing through. But I think when you come from this lifestyle and you kind of understand how things are, uh, you can't help but think like, but But the thing is, though, that there is a protection that's there. I must say, and I must say this too, because um, if I would have plugged into my resource of protection and called the police, my son would probably still be alive. But because I was raised not to call the police, I believe that's something I deal with too, because I should have utilized my resource, and my resource was the police. There was protection there. And yeah, they there is a sense of protection when it comes to our law enforcement.
and now this happens, and you just suppress your emotions and you bottle them up, you disconnect, and now you go through the emotions, and then this rage kicks in, this rage, this hurt, this anger, and now it's like retaliation time, because if you know where it happened, then you know the neighborhood that did it, and then, or where were his friends if they were close by, and so there's a lot of emotions now, because your homeboy should have been there to protect you because they're right there
No.
close by, and then you know that lurking in the shadows is a neighborhood that took you. So it's like, how do you process it now? Now you're sitting with this guilt and hurt, and you're second guessing every decision you made, and now I'm sure the rage just, what does that look like in that moment?
Well, definitely, revenge kicked in, rage kicked in, and I was gonna do what I knew how to do, and that's go and retaliate. That's and it's an ongoing cycle, but I was gonna go down that road, and you know, there was a few times I went to go retaliate in my way, and every time I went down there, something happened that didn't let that revenge take place, and that's when on the third, I want to say the third or the fourth time that I went down there, it hit me, and I said, "Wait a minute, what am I doing here? You know, with why is it why can't I get this? Why can't I push this through? Why isn't it happening?" And it was in a quiet moment that I had had where I hurt my son, and it was the download that was the download that I got from my son.
Now, were you driving? Were you sitting? Like, how did it happen that this download came?
The,
Describe that moment. Like, where were you?
I was actually something something had detoured me from wanting to go through with what I was going to go through with at the time. Um, and because of that presence, I wasn't able to go through with it. And I believe that that presence, that authority was put there. I was supposed to see them so I wouldn't do what I was going to go do. And when I seen them, of course, I'm not going to want to get caught for doing what I was going to go do. So that was the detour that got me out of that got me away from going through with it. And it was on my drive back home that it hit me. That download came to me, and I heard my son's voice, and I heard my son tell me that if I spill blood behind his death, that it was going to damn the both of us.
Wow.
And I could hear him in an almost panicky voice, "Dad, don't do it, Dad, don't do it." And that's when I think God left the impression on me and kind of told me to. And in that same moment, I took him away because he was he was keeping him from doing anything that was gonna keep him from himself, if that makes sense. So it's the God saying, I had to take him. I had to take him out of that situation because it was only going to get worse. And so I removed him from it before it got worse. And so I received all that. And it was in that moment that I said, okay, there's no need for me or anybody around me to go take revenge for my son. I don't I don't have no expectations of myself or anybody at that moment. It kind of all went away, and even left my homeboys wondering about what I was gonna do. Or in fact, I had a phone call that said, "Hey, we're just waiting for you. We're waiting for you to let us know." And I didn't want nobody else to get hurt. I didn't want no other parents to be crying over their kids. And after that download came to me, though, it all stopped. The rage, everything stopped. And so now I learned that I had to work on disciplining myself to keep myself from going back in that place again, that dark place. And it's been a journey, and I've been able to find tools along the way through Danny's Awaken, and a few other resources that I have that I turn to. And yeah, meeting the right people, having a right support group, it's going to help you. It's going to help us. and get through times like that.
Wow. And that's powerful that you mentioned that, you discovered, the awakening event and Danny Morale and so forth. And that's been one of the things that's helped to keep you from acting on that rage,
Yes.
which could have dire consequences, not only for your future, but also for your kids and so forth. Um, wow.
Yeah.
I do have to ask you this question.
Of course.
So Anthony, your best friend, and you had mentioned something
Oh,
earlier. You
Andrew.
said, and Andrew, sorry,
It's okay.
Andrew, and his parents were good parents. They were. Have you had communication with them, like
That's a good question.
after and then over the years, and then do they blame you?
Wow, those are some interesting questions because after he got shot, the story goes, I go to one hospital. I went to the general hospital, and then he went to a hospital, the Memorial Hospital, I
Oh,
believe.
White Memorial.
Actually, I don't know if it's the Memorial. What's the one in Pasadena? That hospital.
Oh, okay,
That one. I forget
okay.
the name of it. Queen of the Valley, maybe. I don't know. So the story goes though is that I go to one hospital, he goes to another, and his parents walk into my room as I'm in the hospital.
That's right, because you're shot
I'm
also.
shot. Yeah, we're both shot, but we just go to separate places. So his mom walks in and looks at me, and she looked at me. And I said, "Hi, Carol," and she fainted. She just fainted. I fell to the floor. Nurses came around her, and then her husband, Buck, his dad, comes up to me. He goes, "What happened?" I give him a little bit of the story, and I said, "How's Andrew?" And he goes, and he whispers to me because he didn't want his wife to hear.
Oh, you didn't know what it
I still didn't know yet. So he whispers to me, he goes, "Andrew's supposed to be right here. They told us that you were in critical condition in the other hospital. And they said that our son was shot, but not in critical condition. And that he was here in this hospital. That's why she fainted. She thought she seen me and realized that her son was the one in critical condition and fainted. He explained to me right there that he wasn't going to make it, that it looks like, he got shot in the head. The funeral comes. We end up, going through the whole motions of the funeral. And I remember going to their house a lot. And his mom was hugging me all the time, hugging me all the time. He had clothes that we used to share clothes. So, I had certain clothes on and she would just start crying. Oh, Andrew used to wear that all the time. And so at first I felt like I was a token of comfort, but then that turned to almost like looking at me like, why are you here and my son's not here? Why did you get to make it and not him? And I felt that. So I stopped going around the house little by little, slowly. And then one day his mom called me up and just raged on me, raged. I don't know why you're still alive. I don't know why my son is not here no more. It's just crying and I can understand her pain. And I remember just staying quiet and just letting her get it all out. And then her saying sorry at the end that I'm never going to hear from her again. Don't worry about it. And then that was the last time I talked to his mom and his dad.
Wow.
Yeah.
You ever thought about reaching out?
Yeah, I have. But I don't know where they're at. I don't know if I want to open up I don't know if it's a can of worms. I don't know what it is. I don't know but I've learned in life that when things don't come back around to me, it's because they were meant not to. They were meant to just be. And I think that's one of them that was just meant to be.
Wow.
Yeah.
I love the fact that you shared that your vendetta is taking all that stored anger and hurt and rage and now put it into positivity, because when you do something like that, like, it's unstoppable. It's unstoppable. And I'm excited to partner with you on this project and seeing how we can start to bring healing into, like I said, the facilities that need it the most, because they're still stuck, like animals caged up. still with that mentality and just always quick to just attack.
Yeah. Yeah. Everything that you're doing right now, this is a movement, you know, Danny and Awaken. This is all part of the movement. Uh, I believe that we need mentors. We need leadership. We need men to be men. We need fathers to be fathers. If you are a man, if you are a father, you need to step up because we're living in a time right now where there's messages, subliminal messages, and just clear messages from media saying that this world is after our children. They're putting it out there. And if you're wise enough to see it, you got to be courageous enough to move and to protect not only your own children, but the children of our communities as well. They need mentors.
No, absolutely. Now, just kind of going backwards a little bit, are your parents still alive?
No, unfortunately, I have my father who passed away. My mother right now is probably in her last days, I believe. So I'm doing my best to try to forgive my mom in a lot of ways for everything.
And that was the question
Working
I was
on
going
it.
to ask next
Yeah.
is, have you come full circle and started the process of forgiving did you forgive your dad before he passed? And, if your mom's, in finer days, are you getting to that point and are you still able to have these conversations with her and start to really go deep?
I think this is probably the best relationship I've had with my mom uh, all my life. It was because I finally broke down, because I found a peace in me with my children. Because when you talk about drug addiction and we talk about this lifestyle, let's not forget that I still had to live through that too. So I created my own addictions. I created I created a world where I was finding myself going down the same road as my parents. This is that generational curse that I found myself going through. So as I'm going down this same course as my parents, and now I'm dealing PCP, now I'm using PCP. I'm doing the same thing as my parents. So as I'm going down this road, man, I realized that, and it's not just I can't say that I just opened up my eyes one day. I got to give God the credit. He plays a big part in my life as far as the transitions that's taken place, right? Uh, Now I'm at a point where I need to make those changes, and at the time, religion was a part of my life, and I used the source the sources through religion, whatever that may be, prayer, fasting, so things like this. I did everything I could to get healed inside, and I did to a certain point, enough to be a good parent, enough to see that there was a change that needed to be made, and then be able to find the courage to make the changes, the resources to turn to. So I started beginning to build my support system on this journey of making this change in my life. And it meant getting rid of a lot of old people, a lot of people that were not a positive influence.
And how did you go about doing that when it's so hard when that's all we know and it's almost like you're abandoning your family because, who do you call on when times get hard? It's you want to be able to have that pick up that phone and know that you've got backup or you've got,
Yes.
a muscle
Yes.
behind you, because life serves you a lot of curveballs.
That's right.
So how do you now do that? Like realize that boundaries, because that's what it is. It's boundaries.
It is. Yeah. It's definitely putting up walls, just for walls of protection. Um, I had to disengage myself with the thought process. Oh, that was the hardest part of making the transition from that of a street gang member to being a productive citizen and being a good person, period. There's a transition that takes place that was real difficult, but I figured it out.
So that's key right there because it's the transition. So what did you figure out? Because this is going to help fathers that are stuck and trying to figure out, like they feel like they can't get out because they're going to get checked if they come back into the neighborhood. There's consequences. When you're in a gang and you just disconnect,
Hmm.
there's consequences. And I think you experienced that. And I do want to touch on the story of when you felt the Holy Spirit and when you walked away from the gang and then the consequences of what happened. So why don't we dive into that first about I know you had shared with me in our personal conversations that, your mom would, even with all her addiction and struggles, she made you go to church and
That's
you went to
right.
church. So Sunday was a day of no matter what's going on during the week, Sunday's a day of healing. And so tell me about that time. I think you said you went like 150 times, you'd gone to church and
Yeah.
never felt anything, but there was just one time that you went to church and you felt something. And then so why don't you share like what you felt and then the consequences that happened when you started on that, what you thought was the right path, but your friends, your homies, the neighborhood didn't think it was the right path for you.
Yeah. Wow. That was a challenging time in my life. Basically what had happened was on December 6th, when my son was born, you'd think that I'd probably want to open up my eyes. I got a new life in front of me, a new responsibility, right? But my best friend had just died a few months ago. So I'm going through this cycle of guilt and doubt and shame and just feeling sad. So I end up on New Year's Eve, uh, jacking a car. Unfortunately, I got caught for it and did the time for it. I paid my consequences. But what happened was I ended up doing that, and when I go back into my neighborhood where everybody was hanging out, the crash unit police had everybody up against the wall, and they
Mm.
were looking for me and that car. And the person that I had took that car from was sitting in the back of the police car, to, for witness. So the people I had in the car with me said, "You need to get out of here. Everybody's right there. You need to get out of here." And I looked at everybody and I said, "Hey, I'm going to go in there and I'm going to park the car. And when I park, you guys better get out and run." And they said, "What are you doing?" In fact, one of my homeboys wanted to sock me for even saying that, but I did it. And I told them, I said, I'm going to go wait for a little bit. So when I parked the car and they all go run out, police see it. They direct their attention towards the car. Everybody scatters. And I just park the car, turn the key off, get out, walk up and put my hands up. And the officer tells me while I'm sitting in the back of the car, he was like, "Why didn't you run?" I said, "Because I need to think. I need to think." And I say that because I think that moment was the moment that journey started up until I go through the camp and then I end up in church because I get out.
Wow.
I get out now and I thought through the whole thing, of course, you have time. I was in camp and still juvenile. I end up, I end up getting out. Long story short is that when I get out, uh, my mom tells me, "You know what? God has his hand on you, and I think that you owe him some respect. You should go to church. Thank God that you're out." Up to that point, though, I must have accepted God, and like I explained. I must have went to the altar and did the Jesus prayer probably about 100 times up to that point. I've always been the guy. No matter what, I would go up there, even when I come back, and homeboys would be like, "Oh, why did you do that for?" Or there would be people outreaching in our neighborhood, and I'd be that one guy. Meet me around the corner. I'll go say that prayer.
Mm.
But I never shut the door to God ever. And go to the altar thinking it's going to be the same thing, but not this time. This time, I was this whole complete feeling came over me, bro. That was undescribable, and it just took me. It took my spirit. It took my mind. It took my everything, and I just bawled and bawled. I think all the hurt, all the pain, everything that I've been through was just coming out. I look over to my right, and I have my dad standing right there, and I said, "Pop, what's going on? What is this, man? Why doesn't it stop?" He said, "Mil, that's the Holy Spirit. You can't stop that." Tells me like that. And he just rubs my back and he just lets me cry. And now church is over. I'm still the last one at the altar. And I go out to the back and say, "Pop, take me out to the back." I'm so, "Pop, please take me outside." And so I go outside and I have cigarettes in my pocket. So I spark a cigarette in the back of the church. And I'm like, "What just happened, Dad?" He was like, that was powerful, man. Oh man, that was God. He got a hold of you today. So that was the experience right there.
Wow.
That made me say, what is this source? What is this God? Who is Jesus? What is all this? This I physically got affected by whatever came over me in that church. So of course, I want to find out because I'm a technical type of thinker. So I want to find out where this came from. So that meant that I had to stop going to my neighborhood because now I want to find out what this is. So my homeboys called me up. Where you been at? We haven't seen you. Da da da. We got a meeting. I said, you know what? I'm not going to be going to those no more. I said, I'll following God, and I'm going to go find out who God is in my life. Well, the next time you come back to the neighborhood, this is going to happen. I'm going to get checked. Okay, I'll be praying for you. Yeah, I don't need your prayers. Hung up on
Wow.
me. A year and a half later, I backslide now.
So you stayed away a year and a half.
That's a long time.
That's a very long time from the neighborhood. Now, you still living in the neighborhood, or because I didn't see how you can maneuver with living there and them not going in.
Yeah, knocking on my door.
Yes.
Yeah, no, wasn't living in the neighborhood no more. But I did about a year and a half later backslide and decide I'm going to go back. I want to see what that was about. When I backslid, meaning that I left the church, I left the faith, I left the discipline, I left behind everything that brought me out of my muck.
Why did you leave? You were having this healing.
Mhm.
You were starting to shift. You got away from that toxicity, and you're in a better place emotionally, psychologically,
Yep.
mentally. Why go back?
Ego
Ego.
got in the way.
Ego.
I didn't know it then, but hindsight, when I look back, I got so good at what I was doing. Went to church with a tie on. I was the pastor's right-hand man, little disciple, leading song service, leading prayers, leading outreaches, things like this. And so with that being said, I got big-headed a little bit, I guess you could say. Ego kicked in. So when the pastor went to go rebuke me one day, I'm 16, so I'm 17, about 17 right there. He goes to rebuke me because I brought a girl to the church and he didn't think it was appropriate. And so I told him, I said, you know what? I don't need your rules. I don't need this no more. I think I'm done. And I walked away from it. But I remember the night that I walked away, I cried and I told God, I'm sorry for walking away from you, but this is what I'm going to do. And I remember bawling that night in my chair. Went home and my whole life turned around.
So that one moment where the priest, the father, so he basically, looked down on you and almost like chastised what you've done. And then you're like, I'm done. So in that moment, just that one shift caused now you to go backwards and allow ego to kick in.
Yes.
And so you went through your emotional moment, you had your conversation with God, and then now,
Yeah,
let's go.
let's go back to the streets. And when I went back to the neighborhood, they were shocked to see me. And I ended up getting checked. I had to box with them back to back to back.
So explain what checked was for.
Checked basically it's the neighborhood saying that they didn't agree with me with what I did and going to church. That it has nothing to do with the gang. So when I show up, they of course I get some people that are hugging me. Hey, how you been, man? I haven't seen you in a while. But then I get those other ones that are that are giving me that look like they're ready to pounce on me. And so there was a sense of fear because I didn't know how far it was going to go. I knew it was coming. I was prepared for it, but I didn't know how far it was going to go. So there was that sense of fear.
And it can go all the way. Like I've seen people get checked and they don't come out of it.
They don't come out of it.
They kill them.
I've seen it.
I've actually seen people hung because a ranking of the neighborhood getting checked. So
that was a story.
Yeah.
And it's an unfortunate story that these street gangs will go that far to prove a point and to install fear and to their own members. I got into this gang because I thought it was a family, and I thought that there was a sense of brotherhood and protection. And although there was a sense of that, it wasn't, it was an illusion in
Mm.
a lot of ways. It was an illusion.
And so now you know you're going to get checked. You go back. Some are greeting you with open arms. Others are like, no. So what happens? You walk in, and is it a conversation like, okay, now we're going to go ahead and hand out,
Yeah.
um,
And the ass whooping. No, basically what happened was once the tension started building up after about 20 minutes after I arrived, tension is building up a little bit, and it gets to the point where it's like, okay, well, I'm not going to run from this. So I might as well face it. So I remember saying, well, if anybody has a problem with what I did, stand up and let me know. Let's take care of it. I want to, let's get it off your chest. So I had to make the initial announcement. Okay, it's time. Let's just get it over with. And so I had one person come up. We got down. After probably about maybe 40 seconds to a minute, I ended up going to the next person that stood up. And so it was back to back, probably about 4 or 5 people. But by the fifth person, though, fourth or fifth person, I'm pooped already. Yeah. So I got my ass kicked at towards the end, which was the goal of the whole thing. And so I kind of think to myself when I look back at that moment, I kind of just said, you know what, let me just hurry up and just fall so it could be done. Because it was me trying to stand up and stay on my feet that kept it going. So I said, hey, wait a minute, let me play possum. But anyways, after it was all said and done, those that were in front of me in a fight shook my hand afterward and just walked away from me and didn't, just kind of stood away. And then others came up and gave me the big hug. And, I just said, man, I'm glad that's over with, because everybody was kind of nervous as far as how far I was going to go too. So I was fortunate enough to be able to get checked like that and walk away. And now I'm back into this neighborhood again, but now I'm 17, 18 years old and I'm 7 times worse. So it kind of lets you know what the next 2 to 3 years were going to be like before I finally said, what am I doing? Why did I come back here? What did I come back here for? There was no productivity. There was no accomplishments. There was no goals met. There was nothing there but just chaos, disruption, and, just evil.
Now, now you're back in the lifestyle again, and you just served God for the last year and a half. Were there any times where you were by yourself where you just questioned, like, okay, I'm doing this, but I can go back. Like, I can just ship. I can go back to where I was living. Or did that cross your mind? Or was it the ego that continued to overtake any rational thoughts?
Yeah, you know what? It was the ego that kept on pulling me back into that mind state of, I got this. This is who I am. This is what I was meant to be. And it wasn't until I recognized that there was an ego that was there, that I was supposed to battle and fight. And I fought that guy, and I fought him, and I put him in a cage. And that guy still talks to me through the bars, but he's in a cage. And I have to remind myself that that guy doesn't need to come out. There's no need for that guy. He's full of destruction.
That's powerful. So you, at 17, 18, now you're starting to realize, like, okay, this isn't for me. And you take that alter personality, that other personality, and you put him in a cage in your mind.
Mm-hmm.
And now you're starting to contain him.
Yes.
And now starts a process of you realizing, I want out. Or what does that look like? So what does that look like? Somebody that's in a gang right now. And so now you're given a strategy of, okay, well, this is who I was. I'm going to put him in a cage. He's in my mind, and he's still rattling and shaking things up, but I'm now going to kind of step into my power. So what does that look like to someone that is struggling with that? How did you make that transition? That enough was enough? Was it in a moment, an incident? or was it just you just had enough?
Oh, that's a lot there. I think for me it was realizing that I had a sense of joy and it was stolen from me. And I want that joy back because joy wasn't nothing that I knew in life, even as a kid. So in that little window of serving God and following God and finding out who he is and just the journey, that's when.
And then how did this correlate with your son? So you have a son. He's what, 3, 4 now?
Yeah, interesting.
And so when you were in the gang life, when you came back, like, what was your interaction with your son? What was your, where did he fall into your life?
Yeah. Well, what ended up happening, I get out from camp and I go to church, I get saved. Me and Andrew's mom, uh, we separated at that point. And
Yeah, sure. You could.
okay.
Sorry.
And so me and Andrew's mom separated at that point. And now you have his mom and his dad both trying to figure out what it is to be a parent, just to be a parent, what it is to be a parent. And his mom was still running in the streets doing drugs. So I decided to take her to court and get custody of my son. I got custody of my son and I raised my son up until he was about 12.
So how are you balancing the relationship though? Like, are you there for your son? Are you telling him you
Fully
love him?
engaged.
Even when you're actively in the gang life,
Mhm.
you're still, how do you know how to love him when you didn't feel that sense of love, like from your parents, because get chaos. So how did you know how to hold him, coddle him? Wow.
Well, I went to school. I went to school to learn how to be a parent. Literally. I was in high school. And when I got saved, remember, I think I was about 16. And so I was still in high school. So I was actually carrying a Bible and carrying my school books and carrying a diaper bag when I go to
Wow.
school. That was me. I was that guy.
Wow.
So I actually went to a parenting class.
Okay.
I learned how to be a father through a class.
Wow. So the parenting class taught you how to be a father.
Mhm.
That's powerful because, in school nowadays, a lot of these classes have disappeared. Homemaker and like,
Right.
I don't know what they're called anymore, but even just like even something as simple as wood shop and auto. But I remember when I was in school, I took a class because it was an easy class and because the girls were in it,
Yeah.
and it was home ec.
Home ec. Yeah.
And it's where they taught you, and you had the baby, and you did the exercise where, if the baby didn't die, like the little doll, then you would get points, and if they would pee these dolls up, but and they taught you how to be parents. So just knowing that in high school, that class taught you how to love.
I could say that. Taught me how to love. Yeah. Taught me how to love a child, how to nurture a child. I was the only boy we're all single moms,
Of course.
single teenage moms, and I was a single teenage dad. I was the only one in there. I kind of liked it a little bit, to be
Oh
honest.
yeah.
But that was a part of my journey was to learn how to be a father because I did not want my kid to be in the foster system. I did not want my kid to be in the boys' homes and juvenile halls. I didn't want him to grow up like that. But I still was still stuck in my mindset. I'm still stuck in the way I dress. I'm still stuck in my character and personality somewhere in there. So this stilo that I've developed up to that point, it was still part of me. So I used to still have that look sometimes of dressing like a cholo, and then I'd have my son with me. I'd have a
Mm.
bottle and I'd have a bottle in one back pocket, and in my other back pocket I'd have a pamper.
So let me ask you a question. And I'm gonna go back a little bit. When you made that decision that you were done with the gang life, Was it for the love of your son, or was it for you?
It was for the love of my son. It was.
Can you honestly say that?
I had to make the change. My son was not going to be able to make it in this world if I didn't change for him, if I didn't change my ways, if I didn't create opportunity for him, he was going to end up falling between the cracks. So I wanted to build a foundation for him for success. That was my goal. That was what I was striving for. But I had no tools. I had no mentor. Didn't even know how to do it, where to go. And with that being said, bro, I believe in higher power. I believe that there is a God, because there was nobody on this earth that was really coming alongside me. And I found my faith. I found my faith. And now that I'm older, 45 now, I see my relationship with God. It's still intact and it's still there, but it doesn't have the tinge of religion in it no more. I love it. I love this relationship that I have, because it's not perfect. I love it because it's always there to nurture, and it's there to guide me. And this relationship it's a beautiful one. But you know what? You know how it gets better is that my two experiences now, in Austin and then over here in Palm Desert.
That was with the Awaken event
I'm
that
sorry,
Danny
yes,
Morel puts on,
Danny Morel's
which is an
Awaken
amazing event.
Amazing, bro. It took me to another level. And I'm grateful. I'm grateful for those experiences, because now I think in one of my breathing sessions that I had in Palm Desert,
Mm-hmm.
I want to believe that I met Mother God that day. I never spoke of Mother God. It's always been the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. That's what religion taught me. And so I've always heard Mother Earth. I've always heard, Mother like that, but never was able to feel a mother, and in a sense of spirit, in a sense of power source. And it all came to me. It all came to me. And I felt, and then my download was that, Mother, how come we haven't heard you? How come I never heard of you? And she pretty much hugged me. You know that feeling that I explained about the Holy Spirit, and how the way the Holy Spirit came over me, and the love and everything that comes along with the feeling of that Holy Spirit?
Yes.
That was the same feeling that I felt when I had the Mother come over me. And it's hard for me to even say that, bro. It really is. But I'm working on not struggling with the fact that there is a Mother and there is a Father. I'm working on it still, because I'm wired to believe that there's only a Father God, and there's only a Jesus, Son of God, and there's the Holy Spirit, right? So because I'm so hardwired in that way, I'm really working through accepting that there is a Mother. And so I did meet her.
And just with the breath work that Danny Morel led at his Awaken event, just, of course, going through the 3 days, but then that breath work just took you in deep, kind of to that spiritual place of when you felt the Holy Ghost. That's powerful.
Yes. And the same feeling, like I said, the Holy Spirit, and the feeling that I received from the Mother that day. Mother God, is that how we, I don't even know how to verbalize that.
They call it source, because there's different, source can exactly.
Gotcha.
So it's whatever resonates with you.
Okay.
But source is like the universal one.
Yeah. And interestingly enough, I'm sorry, but I'm excited about it, so I'm going to speak on it real quick.
Absolutely.
But it was a sense of femininity. Did I say that word right?
Mm-hmm.
It was a sense of that. See, because when I know my Father God in heaven, and it is a masculine feeling, that it's the sense of a hug from a father. It's a sense of it's a voice that I hear that's a man's voice. So it's very, very masculine. And when I felt Mother God, it was very feminine. It was very nurturing. And so there was a different atmosphere that was around me at the time that she was presenting herself to me.
Wow. So let me go back to that time when you left the gang and now you want nothing else to. What did those steps look like? What steps did you take to start to distance yourself? Because this is something that I'm sure a lot of fathers that are in that lifestyle are struggling with. What did you do? So I know you knew that you wanted a better life for your son and you knew that this wasn't for you anymore. But what steps did you take in order to now disconnect yourself? Because that's something that's bred. It's all you
That's
know.
right.
It's chaos you've been in and you've earned a name on the streets and you've got clout and you know what did you do? Like what are the steps?
Well, I think the first thing I did was I wanted to find a support system.
Okay.
And it's usually the ones that can make the change. It's because they have somebody already in their life that are planting seeds in their mind. That's normally kind of how it starts. And it's allowing those seeds to grow inside you. And I think for me, what finally allowed me to disconnect is because I found a support system that was that was leading me down a road to success. And so I think if you're really serious about the changes you want to make in your life, plug into a support system that's going to help you make those changes.
Wow. So do you mind sharing who your support system was? Was it a person? Was it an organization?
Interestingly enough, it was it was my spouse at the time. I got with a woman that I was married to for 20 years up until we got divorced. And in the beginning of that, she helped she helped me through my struggles in my mind. And because her mom was a psychologist and had a bachelor's degree in psychology, her mom stepped in and really helped me open up my mind and find those hurting places in me and help me heal little by little in little areas, just by talking to me, just by the nurturing. Um, that's kind of how the way it started. But then I started meeting men that came into my life, mentors that I needed to hear from. And I think in the middle of it all, what I would do is I would remind myself that this is a journey and that there's obstacles. And I need to be courageous enough to face these obstacles. And I didn't know what they were, where they were coming from. I just knew that they were going to be there. Now, is those downloads? Possibly. I don't know, but I just know that there was a sense of direction inside me that said, don't do this, do that. Don't listen to this, listen to this. And it was a discipline that I had to develop somewhere along the line too. We're not going to make these changes without discipline. You have to discipline yourself.
So it was one, having an open mind,
Correct.
two, wanting to make the change, and then three, plugging into a system. So it can be one person planting those seeds that can really start to make the difference between whether or not you're going to have success or whether or not you're going to revert back.
That's right.
That's powerful. And the reason I share that is because a lot of times, especially people that are trying to help someone, whether it's in this lifestyle or just with other trauma that they're going through, sometimes we feel like we're not getting through,
Mm.
like we're not, we're just wasting our time or we're speaking to a wall. And this is good because did you just accept it right away or did it have to just kind of like a seed it planted? Because this is powerful for someone that maybe is struggling with a family member that's maybe going through the same thing. And they're trying to show them the positivity and there's, beautifulness on the other side and there's bliss, but yet, and they're talking to them about, making a change, but then it just goes in one ear and out the other. So when you're in someone in your shoes, are you really listening? Because I know the ego's still fighting it. So do you process it or are you just like, yeah, yeah, whatever. But then when you're alone, then you sit with it.
Yeah. I think first and foremost, it's always good to just be able to put yourself in front of people that are where you want to be. it's hard though, because we have limitations on ourselves. We put limitations on ourselves. And with that being said, my limitations were I wasn't good enough. My limitations were as soon as they see me, they ain't gonna trust me. Got a bald head. Look at my skin color. Got a few tattoos. So I put limitations on myself. And it wasn't until I found a breakthrough within myself to say, you have no limitations. People are going to accept you. Just be yourself. And once I started believing those words that were in here, I was able to step out of a little bit more encouraged and be more courageous in approaching people. And once I seen that they were just happy to want to help me, I'm like, oh, this ain't that hard. There is room for change. There are good people in this world that want to come alongside me and help me make those changes. So until you step out of yourself and take those limitations off and step into a little bit of faith and have a little bit of courage, that's the formula, I believe, that's going to lead you into that transformation that you're looking for.
Wow. Now, what about when you were raising your son with your wife? How was that? Was there a lot of love and bliss, or was there like turmoil, or well, what did that look like? Like, walk me through maybe a couple of
Oh,
years of how what your son experienced when you were married.
yeah, that's interesting because keep in mind too that he is a child from a previous relationship. Now, my wife is a different at the time
Mm,
is a different woman. So when I get into this relationship with her, I come in with my son Andrew. She comes in with her son Andrew. So she has a son
wow.
from a previous relationship as well. That's how we started this family at the time. And then we went on to have two kids together. So we had a household of four. And then, I got baby mamas, unfortunately. Wasn't disciplined in my younger years. So I have a son, Anthony, from a previous relationship as well. So me personally, I have a total, I had four kids, and I say had because one of them, come to find out, wasn't mine down the road. Just recently found that out. Had an idea, but anyways, that's a whole nother podcast. But
Well, let me ask you. But you
yeah,
raised him as your
I
son,
did.
okay? And how does that change now? Does it really change
For
because you're not biological?
No, I don't.
Okay,
Not for me and my heart, but it
okay.
changed. It changed my son's state of mind. It changed who he was
Mm,
towards me. He even moved out and went to a whole nother state on the East Coast, and all this came out through the divorce.
mm,
Facts came out,
yeah.
and when facts came out, people got hurt. And my son was a cross country track star. Went to Long Beach University. My other son was being scouted by D1 high school. I mean by D1 colleges for football. Went to Rancho Cucamonga High School, and he was on his way to go. Both of my kids were going to get scholarships and go to nice universities, and they were gonna be the thing for me, bro. That was gonna make my life worth it, make everything that I went through in my life worth it, because I was going to be able to put my kids through that lifestyle that they weren't supposed to have. And that's where the generational curse got broken. That's
Mm.
where it was supposed to get broken right there. And then the divorce. And so there's a lot of hurt there with my children, my boys. We've talked through it and worked through it, but that destroyed us, my family. If I could go back and go through my divorce again, I would go through my divorce. I wouldn't try to keep the marriage, but I would have done it differently. I wouldn't have disconnected so abruptly from my children. I wouldn't have scarred the woman that nurtures and cares for my children. I would have done things different.
Wow.
But there was so much pain there. There was so much. I can't believe you lied to me. The distrust, everything. Just there was a lot going on.
So interesting you say that, because I just did a short video about how you treat your son or daughter's mother is going to impact how they treat them or how they treat you. So
That's right.
because of the pain and anger that you bestowed upon your wife, now you're going through a divorce, that had ramifications because now the children take sides.
That's right.
And so now looking in differently, you would have done it differently. But in that moment, because now the rage kicks in, the hurt, the old you comes out, that one that's
Right, bro.
caged is now speaking more of authority. And now in the process, you're breaking that bond with your kids.
Yes. And that's exactly what happened. I moved right down the street from them, got an apartment. I wanted to stay close to the school. I was very involved with their sports. I coached my kids all the way growing up. And although I was only a mile down the road, my kids never came to really see me. Whatever moms was putting into their head about who their dad was and what he was about or whatever lies that she gave them, kept them from me.
But you still showed up.
I still showed up.
You still showed up again, even if they didn't acknowledge you.
Yes, I was still there.
Wow, that's
I was
powerful.
still there. I just didn't know how not to. And then at some point, it got to that point where I was like, you know what? I'm not getting no response from my kids. Why am I even trying? And so I started distancing myself, communication, not as much. Things like this start happening. And my son, my youngest son, he doesn't talk about it. You know, he's pretty tough little guy. And but I know he carries I see it in his eyes sometimes, carries a lot of hurt. He carries things in him that I want him released from, because I feel like I kind of caused some of what he deals with today through that divorce and how it happened.
How old is he?
He's 22 now.
He's 22.
He's 22.
And are you guys working on that process of healing?
Yeah, definitely. Me and my son have had multiple conversations about how things could have went, should have went, but ended up turning out to happen. So I've helped him understand where my state of mind was. I wanted him to know how much I loved him and how much I regret not fighting through some of my thoughts and some of my hang-ups. You know, I got issues that I was dealing with too. So, you know, I was going through some of my own thing. And so my son, he understood, and me and him have a really good relationship. We both ride bikes, you know. I bought me a motorcycle, and then he just recently got him a motorcycle. So we go and meet up at my son's gravesite. We go, he lives in Rancho, and I live over here in Walnut. So we meet up in the middle, you know. We go hang out with my son at the cemetery, and me and him have our deepest conversations right there at the cemetery with my son.
Do you cry in front of your son?
All the time. He knows it's okay to cry. Yeah, he knows it's okay.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
So men, even like I said, you know, even if you've come from the streets, you have nothing to prove. It's okay to cry.
It's okay.
It's okay.
It definitely is okay to show your emotions. And the ones that appreciate it the most are your children.
Mm-hmm. Now, what about your son that moved out of state? How's that relationship going?
Going really good, actually.
Okay, so it's come full circle. So you guys are connecting now?
With Joseph. Well, because I have two sons.
Okay.
So my son Anthony, he lives up in Lake Tahoe right now,
Okay.
moving back down. But as far as Joseph goes, I reached out to Joey a couple times, and I talked to Mikey, which is his younger brother, and you know what Mikey tells me is that every time he talks about Joey, he says, you know, Joey's a little lost, Dad. He's a little lost. And I said, yeah, I can only imagine. Does he want to talk? Say anything? No, he don't talk about nothing. So that's kind of how we leave that. And I you know, put that in petition and prayer. Just hope that one day I can rekindle that relationship.
So I want to give you a piece of advice, if that's okay.
Please.
I didn't talk to my daughter for about 4 to 5 years because of a disagreement we had, and my ego and pride was so strong that I wasn't going to give in, and she was a replica of me. So we missed out on a lot of years. But I remember I still would ask her mom, like, how's she doing stuff? And she knew I was like still inquiring. And the one thing I regret is not reaching out and stepping into my power as a father and wisdom. Because when we finally reconnected, she says, the one thing I wanted from you, Dad,
Mm.
is to not give up. And I allowed my pain and anger to stop me from healing the relationship. And if there's one thing I could do and go backwards in time, was I wouldn't have stopped trying. But because I was so stuck in my masculine, I said, no, I'm not going to give. You're fucking dead to me. But I was the father. It's my
Wow,
baby.
bro. That's deep.
So I would just challenge you to not give up. Because although they're not being receptive, they're not, oh, thank you. Although they're not being receptive and they're not taking it, they're listening.
Yeah.
They're listening. And sometimes our children just want us to fight
That's it.
for their love.
Oh, bro, that's so deep.
So
It
don't
resonates.
give up.
Thank you for that.
Yes.
Definitely resonates with something my son said to me. So that hit the heart. Thank you for sharing that with me.
No, absolutely. This has been a powerful, powerful talk. Is there anything else you want to share? I know we've covered a lot, but is there anything you want to share that maybe can help other fathers that are struggling, whether it's with trying to reconnect or just tools or tips or anything you can offer?
Yeah. You know, children are a sponge, and our children are in schools where they're learning from teachers, right? And I'm under the impression that these days teachers are able to teach our kids whatever curriculum they're given, or put in front of them, right? With that being said, is fathers, you definitely got to be your kid's number one teacher.
Wow.
Teaching starts in the home.
Wow. Fathers, you have to be your kid's number one teacher. That is powerful. That's freaking beautiful. Can we grab that? Like, okay. So fathers have to be their children's number one teacher.
Yes. And our children, because they love us and because they trust us, they're gonna hear us. They're gonna listen to us. They're sponges and they want instruction. Show me how. Show me where. They're listening. And I say that, man, because these kids grow up so fast that we forget to hold on to the moments of being present
Mm.
physically, mentally. Be present with your children in their years as they're growing up.
Mm.
That's very important. So I encourage any father out there that finds himself in a distant relationship with your child, or you have a young child. They're waiting to hear from you. They want to learn from you. And like you said, bro, they don't want us to give up. I had my youngest son tell me, Dad, don't give up, please. Don't give up. Because at my lowest point of my son's death, I almost took my life. And I seen the hurt on my kid's face because I'm such a strong man in their eyes that they could never see that I was going to ever be so devastated that I would go that far. So, yeah, we can't give up. Our community need mentors. Our children, they need guidance. And if you let somebody else guide your child, you leave it up to the teachers, you leave it up to society, they may guide your child down the wrong road. So I just hope that you hear this.
Wow. And you said something that resonated with me because I had an uncle. I'm named after an uncle, my Uncle Eddie. And he took his life when I was in high school. And he took his life because of a lot of pain and hurt and guilt from a marriage that fell apart and his girls not, showing love, and he just felt lost and abandoned. And then there's a lot more to it, but it was that final, like, well, if you guys can accept me, then I'm going to show you, and I'm going to instill that pain. And he took his life. And it's a very common. It's very common, when we feel disconnected, like, well, we're going to show them, we're going to pay them back by now letting you live with that pain, and it's that generational curse.
Wow.
So it's very, very common, believe it or not. I've heard this story over and over again, where someone in the family took their life just to instill pain on their kids. Yeah. So, yeah, it's more
That's
common
powerful.
than,
Yeah, interesting.
um, but this has been a beautiful podcast, and thank you for sharing. And I
Course.
think the most powerful message that came from it, and there was a lot, but one, it's okay to cry in front of your kids. It's okay to show your emotions. Another thing is just you can cage that animal inside, and you don't always have to follow that. When you're ready, you can choose to. Doesn't matter where your upbringing is, or you came from the streets, or what life dealt you. If they didn't deal you, the parents that were loving and caring, you can still choose to become your own person, but you have to make that choice. You have to make that choice. And even when tragedy strikes, yes, we're going to go through our emotions, but there is beauty and blissfulness on the other side. And it's how you show up now. It's how you honor your son. It's what's going to be his legacy that you're now going to bring to the forefront as you take all this baggage from the past, and you've learned to process it. And now you're in a whole new state. And I'm excited to one, be a part of your journey, as I'm glad that we've started to establish a friendship, and I'm looking
Definitely.
forward to definitely watching your journey unfold as you watch mine unfold
Yes.
also.
Yeah, this
So
this is exciting. This is exciting, Eduardo. You're genuine when I see that, bro. I'm sure you had to come down a long road and maybe a few breakthroughs to get to where you're at today. But I just want to encourage you to keep on going down your journey, because there's more breakthroughs coming your way.
absolutely.
And man, the enlightenment that's going to be on the other side, bro. I'll see you there,
No,
hopefully.
thank you.
Yes.